Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
I have to say, watching this time, it was just like in the back of my mind is, what would this be like as a watching experience if it kind of wasn't working for you? And I do get that there are a few things in it which are potentially off-putting, but for me, this is the best musical film of the last 20 years.
Kids singing in the musical can be kind of like hard to actually discern what they're saying, and none of that was present in the film, because I think they've obviously taken the better takes and maybe toned it down a bit in some places, and I think it works fantastically compared to what I saw on stage. But on stage I still think it's astonishing, to the extent it's one of my top 3 musicals.
Hello film fans, joining Flixwatcher today we have Tom.
Hello.
We have John.
Hello.
And we have Kobe.
Hi.
And we're here today to talk about Matilda the Musical.
Woo-hoo. Thank you as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes, and thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for editing our podcast. Please do, if you're listening to this, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating and a glowing review, and join in the conversation with us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod or on Instagram at FlixWatcher.
Hello film fans, our guests today are John and Tom. Over to you please, John, say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Yep, hello, I'm John Dorney. I am a scriptwriter, mainly, an actor sometimes, and part of the reason I'm here is because I was on the Best Pick podcast where me and my friend Tom, who is with me today, and my other friend Jessica Regan, who isn't, watched the films that had won Best Picture at the Oscars, and various few other films for various other reasons after the time. And yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. I'm also occasionally close-up card magician, just for fun.
Is that real?
Yeah, that's real. Yeah,
what?
Yeah, I do.
How come you've never shown me that?
That's how we both
John and
met.
I first bonded. We'd been to see different shows at the same theatre because we each had a friend in a different show.
Yeah, because I'd been to see one and you were turning up to the beginning of the next one, and we'd had an interaction online about Doctor Who because we're massive Doctor Who nerds.
And we got chatting about card magic.
It was a combination of card magic, Columbo, and Doctor Who. Were what we bonded over, and just discussing all of those things was a true delight.
Columbo, I note, is now, all of them are now available on Amazon Prime with a freebie.
Yep. Oh, that's glorious. A few weeks ago, I had a Columbo party because some of my friends had never seen an episode of Columbo before.
Wow.
And I got them over and had a big bowl of chili, and I was curating a couple of episodes to show them. So I picked one deliberately because I thought it was fun, which is one called Fade Into Murder, which is William Shatner. It's not one of the best ones, but it's William Shatner. It's hilarious. It's William Shatner playing a Columbo parody where they're taking the piss out of Peter Falk to his face. And it's got the most insane sort of endings, and the levels that Shatner's operating on have to be seen to be believed, and even then, not believed.
And if you like the inverted mystery structure, but you prefer it if it was more modern television and shorter episodes and with a female lead, you now have two choices.
Oh.
Because you have Poker Face and Elsbeth, which, as far as I can tell, are two different versions of exactly the same show. Yeah. But they both start with the murder and then have the quirky female investigator figure out what's going on and wrap it all up inside 50 minutes.
I like Poker Face. I haven't seen I didn't know about Elsbeth, so I'll check that one out.
Elsbeth is from the makers of The Good Wife and features recurring character Elsbeth Tassioni, now transplanted from Chicago to New York.
I will have to watch that. I'm still working my way through all the episodes of original Columbo because I watched all of the sort of 70s ones, which are the classics, and then I'm slowly forcing my way through the 80s and 90s revival.
There's some good ones in there.
No, I know. One of the ones I watched most recently, there's a few where they kind of break the format and try some interesting things. But then I think I watched one called, was it Columbo Goes to College I saw recently, which is quite fun.
That sounds like a carry-on film.
Oh, no, I know, but it's surprisingly good. And unfortunately, it's got a couple of things that go slightly wrong with it, in that the killers are good and fine, but one of their dads is played by Robert Culp, who's like one of the absolute icons of the original one, and he just turns up and wipes the floor with them on charisma level. Anyway, I watched that one, and then I went back to the most recent one I've watched is an episode called Murder in Malibu, which is absolute horse shit. Yeah.
When are we doing our Columbo podcast?
Oh, I don't know. We really should at some point. Yeah.
I'll come on as it was like logistically one of the things that my dad always used to watch, and I'd happily watch it with him because. Anyway, this is Columbo, guys. It's available on Amazon, which is a different streaming channel.
Never seen it, probably not.
Yeah, really,
God,
honest to God, Columbo. Do
yourself a favour.
As I say, I would suggest the other episode I watched to introduce people because I thought it was a good choice because it was a short one. It's one called "Suitable for Framing."
Yeah, it's very good.
And
is that the one with the hand when he puts his hand into?
No, don't say.
Okay.
Don't say.
Yes, it is, and shut up.
But because it was just the moment of watching my friends who'd never seen an episode of Columbo before, in particular, one of them, when the big sort of reveal happens, one of them just literally flipped the bird at the television. Because the villain is such an absolute wanker that even just over an hour and 10 minutes you go, thank God he's got caught. Up yours, you shit.
People say America doesn't have a class system, but Columbo is all about class.
Yeah.
The whole point of Columbo is it's shambling working class Detective Columbo getting one over on these upper class snooty murderers. Anyway.
That was our Columbo Digest diversion.
Coming soon, the Columbo podcast. That's just a little teaser of what to expect.
That's all good. That's fine. Columbo Watcher coming through on his pod feed soon. One thing, let's get into the film, but I just want to say, I think you guys are our most recurring, well, certainly Tom, but Best Pick in general are our most recurring guests here. We've had Tom, Pinocchio, The Stranger, Midnight Run, and Fargo, and also Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I can't remember what Jessica Regan chose, but guys, it's always a pleasure to have you on here.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So guys, if you like the voices of Tom and John and would like to hear what Jessica sound like, go to their podcast first, go to Best Pick, but then also come back here and search for all the shows they've come on and talked about on this. We're talking today about Matilda the Musical, as chosen by yourself, Tom. Can you tell us first of all why you chose it, and then we'll go to the synopsis, in which you have 60 seconds or less to give us the breakdown.
I chose it because I love it. I'm sort of hoping this is going to be a love-in. I have to say, watching it this time, it was just like in the back of my mind is, what would this be like as a watching experience if it kind of wasn't working for you? And I do get that there are a few things in it which are potentially off-putting, but for me, this is the best musical film of the last 20 years.
Holy shit.
I think it's that good.
Keep your powder dry.
No,
spoilers. This is a Columbo as well. We've already had the big. We know who the killer is. We've just got to figure out how to get.
We know Tom scores straight away.
You kind of do. There are going to be some high scores from me here. I love this film. I think it's all the things that could have gone wrong absolutely failed to go wrong, and it just, for me, works an absolute treat.
Splendid. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know who doesn't know the story of Matilda right now, but let's get this timer up for the synopsis, starting now.
So Matilda Wormwood is a young girl who is so unloved by her hateful parents that they have forgotten to send her off to school. When she gets to school, when she gets to Crunchem Hall, she discovers that far from being the palace of learning that she was hoping for, where everyone's giving her books to read, it's actually a sort of dictatorship run by the evil Miss Trunchbull, who gets pleasure from torturing children and indeed flinging them over walls. But luckily, Matilda is not only blessed with a fecund imagination and an incredible brain, but with magical powers that are going to come in incredibly useful when it comes time to save the day.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
Beautiful. Did anyone not know what happens in Matilda before watching this for the first time?
No.
No, I've read.
I think I even had, when they always used to do those Facebook, which character from this thing are you? Which Roald Dahl character are you? It was always Matilda. I was always Matilda.
Oh.
Well, tell us about that, John.
Tell us your mother's maiden name and your first street you were born on.
No, I mean, I think I always identify with the idea of a child who read a lot, because I used to live in Epping, and Epping, there's not especially by our modern standards, big Tesco's, but there was a Tesco's that my mum would do the shopping in, and she'd park me in the Epping bookshop, which was just around the corner, where I effectively treated it as a library, because they knew I would read books. I'd just sit in the bookshop and glance through books there, because they knew I just bought so many of them, and my house is absolutely littered with books. I've got a pile of books which is so high and ordered. It's in a specific order that occasionally I bump around and shift things according to, sometimes if there's a film that's coming out and I want to read the book first, things like that. And I almost never manage to read the book in time before the film comes out and miss the film. But this is almost an ex-girlfriend of mine once calculated, she kind of went around and counted how many books I'd got and said, well, if you read one a month for the rest of your life, you would not manage to read all of the books in your pile before you die. And she thought this was some kind of like, oh, you need to look at yourself. And I immediately thought, oh, that sounds like a challenge.
I'm going to add some more to the piles.
I manage between 30 and 40 a year. So I don't, admittedly, one of the books I'm trying at the moment is Moby Dick. And crikey, that takes its time. There are whole pages of... Yeah, there are whole pages you get through of Moby Dick. It's weird because they talk about Moby Dick a lot in this film, and it kind of, like she implies she read it in a week. Like hell you did, Matilda. No one's read
But also,
Moby Dick.
she's got the power of telekinesis.
I know. I mean, but there are whole pages of Moby Dick. You kind of go, well, I guess I read that. I certainly looked at every word.
There are words on the page.
Yeah, it's the one where I kind of feel that almost all of the others I can buy. Moby Dick, you kind of go, no, you lying little shit, Wormwood. So, I'm on Miss Trunchbull's side on this one.
Well, let's talk about... There's loads of places we can go. I'm going to try and wrangle it in. Where is it? Where's Matilda the story in your pantheon of Roald Dahl stories, just in general? Is it high up there?
It came out just a little bit too late for me to have read it as a kid. So the ones I read as a kid were James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, The Magic Finger, which nobody remembers, The Twits. I read all of those when I was growing up. But this is a late-ish Dahl, and I didn't read it when I was growing up. And I remember the 90s film being on TV and seeing it then and thinking it was fine. Nothing very special, but absolutely fine. Perfectly enjoyable. And so in some ways it's an odd one to pick because I don't feel, maybe this is just me not having read it as a kid, I don't feel it had the same kind of cultural cachet as some of those earlier classics. But something about it evidently spoke to Tim Minchin and Dennis Kelly. Because I think Tim Minchin wanted to do it for a while, and then there was another competing project, or the rights weren't available, something like that. I haven't looked into the details. But as soon as he realised that he could be working on this, he sort of dropped everything else, abandoned his live performing career for something like 2 years in order just to work on this, and was repaid handsomely because it's still running today.
Yeah. I think I'm with Tom because I think it might be his last major book. I think after that you've only got things like SEO Trot, and I think maybe The Giraffe, the Pelly, something like that. I read a biography, Storyteller, the biography of Roald Dahl, which is a very good book with some weird omissions. I mean, I will point out that I kind of looked at one point. I looked up what I would say is his most famous short story, and it's not mentioned in the book. In the index, and it's not mentioned anywhere in the book. And what would you say is the most famous
short story? Henry Sugar?
No, not Henry Sugar. Well, now
Red
that
Wings?
is to degrees. No, I wouldn't go with that. I would have gone with Lamb to the Slaughter.
Oh yeah, maybe yes, yeah.
This is the one they adapted for Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Yeah.
And that's bizarrely not there at all. But yeah, so I didn't read it as a kid either, and I don't think I've read it now, and I'm not sure I'd race to read it now, having made the mistake of like many years later. In fact, on the way in actually to meet you for a thing, I remember reading this on the tube, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which is one of the ones you go, oh, I've never read Charlie and the Great Glass
That's
Elevator.
a weird book.
Why have they never adapted this? You read it and you go, oh God, that's why.
Yes.
That's why, because it's awful on so many levels.
Okay.
And yeah, I could not possibly recommend it. But I still think that there's been enough of a sense of vaguely knowing. So weirdly, it means that every time I've sat down to see it, I think I vaguely am aware of what the story is and bits of it that sit there in my head.
You're back to Matilda now, sorry.
Yeah, back to Matilda. Bits of Matilda sit in my head, and so that when I kind of watch it, go, oh yes, of course, that's what the plot of Matilda is, and bits that you kind of really stick with you, like the eating of the cake, and I got to work years ago. I had one of the a sort of anti-hero in a Doctor Who I wrote was played by Pam Ferris, so I got to work with her, and she's lovely.
She plays Trunchbull
in the 90s version of it. So
with Danny DeVito.
This kind of weird thing where the amount of people who were like wanting photographs taken with her for kids who were obsessed with that film and her having to look cross at people.
Being swung around by the pigtails.
I don't think she would have quite managed to do that, but they were very keen to various kids turning up and wanting photos with her, which was quite exciting because that doesn't often happen all that often. But yeah, so I've been vaguely aware of it as part of the, for want of a better term, cultural zeitgeist, but not really familiar with it. The BFG is my kind of one that's really like dead center of what I saw and the one I'm familiar with ish, and I remember reading at the time.
Helen, where's Matilda for you?
Yeah, so I would have been about 7 or 8 when it came out, and I would have had it for my birthday book, so I absolutely loved it. And probably Matilda or the BFG are like my top tier Dahl books, and just like absolutely loved Matilda, that she liked books, and just completely loved it to the point where I have neither seen the other Matilda or this, because I do
The
not feel
Matilda
that
in your
either
head.
could match up to the Matilda in my head and the experience of reading Dahl when I was at that kind of like perfect age to like really, really love him. So that's why I've just basically not really been interested, because I'm like, well, I've read the book and the book was pretty cool when I was a kid.
Like
and it was
probably
all
the ones
great.
that maybe the Witches as well are the ones that are most like actual books. I mean, as I say, saying this from the position of not having read Matilda, but they all feel like they've got the scale and the scope in a way that some of the early ones, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, George's Marvellous Medicine, are all kind of like a tiny bit of an anecdote and a shower of ideas rather than an actual plot.
For me, I'm looking at The Witches, BFG and Matilda as my kind of top. I can't really pick one, but those are... I don't think I've actually ever read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is quite interesting, so maybe I should go back for that. But yeah...
And stop there, it's just the one.
I also remember super clearly Victoria Wood doing Jackanory for Matilda, and absolutely being... I never used to like Jackanory that much.
Oh, yes, that makes sense.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's two Jackanories that are like indelibly imprinted into my mind. One is Rick Mayall doing
George's Marvellous Medicine.
And
that's a glorious one.
Yeah, and that was just like, it's just absolutely like, I remember him reading it, and it was all in one sitting, because normally Jackanories are split over a few days, and I hated that. But that was one episode, and Rick Mayall, this guy who I didn't know before, was just like an absolute firestorm on the screen. And then, but Victoria would do Matilda, and I remember when... Anyway, this is going down a rabbit hole. We want to talk about the film and this one in particular, but yeah, Matilda is up there. So I've seen the film. I've seen the previous film with Danny DeVito and Ray Perlman, and enjoyed it. But then I'm a huge, huge fan of Tim Minchin. And when this musical came out and it was by Tim Minchin, I was like, well, I'm going to see it. And I don't typically like kids singing.
No.
It's a risk.
But it works well in the musical, but I think it works better in the film, because I think some of the pitchiness of kids singing in the musical can be kind of like hard to actually discern what they're saying, and none of that was present in the film. So I think they've obviously taken the better takes and have maybe toned it down a bit in some places, and I think it worked fantastically compared to what I saw on stage. But on stage, I still think it's astonishing, to the extent it's one of my top 3 musicals.
The thing that impressed me most about the stage and the movie versions, which are basically the same creative team, it's Tim Minchin writing the songs, Dennis Kelly writing the script, and Matthew Warchus directing. The stage version is absolutely a thing of the theatre. It uses all sorts of theatrical conventions, people talking to the audience, the thrill you get by having people on like trapezes swinging out over the stalls, all of this stuff that is pure theatre.
The pigtails girl being thrown into the...
Yeah, yes. One of the things that moved me the most, and it seems like a weird thing to be moved by, but it really was, is after the great big opening Welcome to the World number, which is quite considerably cut down for the movie, where it serves as the opening titles, the stage is kind of cleared. And this tiny child stood in the middle of this enormous stage and looked out at the audience and just began singing. And I thought, fucking hell, if this doesn't work, like everything else just collapses around it. And it did. It worked completely. And that was so exciting. And they had the courage to take this story that so many people, like Helen, will have read as kids and loved, and figure out what they needed to respect and what they could ride roughshod over. And to do that with incredible taste and care. And then what's even more remarkable is the same team was reassembled and had the same attitude to their previous work, and just ditched anything which isn't helpful, rewritten, rearranged, but kept what made it so moving and so exciting and so extraordinary on stage. I just think it's an incredible feat of adaptation both times.
The Tim Minchin of it all, I think he's just an astonishing person.
Yeah.
Generally, and when you see someone step on stage as a comedian and they bring out a musical instrument, my heart tends to sink.
Yeah, 100%.
But with Minchin, it just doesn't. And he's astonishing as a comedian, as a musician. And when he put this together for Matilda, I was just like, well, this guy is great. And then he pulled out Groundhog Day, which to this day astonishes me, as I don't understand how it didn't make it big in the States. It's
They're having another go now, aren't they? They're relaunching it.
Hopefully they have another go, but
a slightly cut down, cheaper version that can tour more easily. Doesn't need that revolve, which apparently was a huge pain in the arse.
Oh, was it? But still. But I think this is great. I think the main downside for this for me is that 2 hours long versus the 1.5 hour film, the non-musical film. And I think that maybe makes it a bit tougher for younger kids, even though there are kids singing. I watched it for the first time with my son Milo, who's 4 years old, and I just said, Milo, do you want to watch a film with kids singing? He's like, yeah, sure, why not? And he went in, he was interested and he wasn't interested, he was interested and wasn't interested. But I think 4 years is still quite old, and Trunchbull is a scary, she's probably the best, well, I was going to say the Witches actually, but she's a fantastic...
Witches are pretty scary.
Yeah, she's a fantastic Roald Dahl evil villain character. He wasn't fazed by the girl being thrown into the bushes with the pigtails. He thought that was hilarious. But then there's that kind of Vietnam army bit where the bombs were going off, and my wife and I were like, what the fuck is this for 4-year-olds? But yeah, I really enjoyed it much more than I thought I was going to. And this is my first time watching it. And I'd held off because I liked the musical and I liked the book. I loved the book and I loved the previous incarnations. I just thought, I don't think it's going to work. But it did. And
as soon as it started, and this is when I saw it in the cinema for the first time, I just felt like it was in safe hands. Little things like the fact that it's Tim Minchin's music we hear over the distribution company logos just means that this is this coherent oral world. And then using that opening song to do the titles and then shooting that in a sort of non-literal way. So we get out of the hospital into that just sort of field of yellow. It all just works really, really well. I mourn the loss of one lyric, because I had this, as soon as I finished seeing the show, I bought the soundtrack album. I do miss a lyric from that opening song, which has been cut, which is, my mummy says I'm a precious barrelina. She has never seen a prettier barrelina, which I just think is the most delightful thing. But that's kind of my only criticism of the whole film.
Well, I might dive in.
Go on then.
No, I'm not saying I've got a criticism. But the thing that kind of leapt to my mind at the end of watching it was I thought about a couple of movies. I thought about Up and I thought about Wall-E. And for really specific reasons.
Interesting.
Are you having a think about trying to figure out what the connection is?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, with both of those, and so the beginning and end of Up and the beginning of Wall-E are amazing and astonishing. And the rest of the film is very good. But because the beginning are amazing and astonishing, it ever so slightly makes you feel down on the bits that aren't. And so with this, it really struck me when watching it through, kind of going, all of the Tim Minchin songs are absolutely amazing. And then there are the bits where you're just waiting for another Tim Minchin song. That's really underselling it, because those bits are good and fine. But and in any other, if it was a straight adaptation without the music, you'd go, this is a really good adaptation of Matilda. But because it's a slightly unfortunate thing, really, because the songs are insanely good. But that's one of the things where I'm going, well, they're all part and parcel of the same thing. The bits in the middle are servicing the songs and helping the songs out. So you couldn't take that out and just have the songs.
In the school song where you realise that they've been singing the alphabet.
That bit, I thought, that blew my mind.
It's incredibly good. And the lyrics are not forced in any way. I think I would wager impossible to hear that the first time through without knowing the gag and spot that there's anything going on at all.
Yeah,
let alone anything as clever as all of the sounds of the names of the letters
on
have
the
been included
beat.
In the lyrics. I mean, it is phenomenal. How does that man's mind work?
When I saw that bit happen, I just thought, oh my God, this is one of the cleverest things I've ever seen.
On stage, that's done by inserting wooden blocks into a frame, so they bang the block in, and so the letter appears. And then in the movie, obviously, they have all the signs with the letters on, coming into frame at the right moment. It's just
so that's the thing. When you've got that balance of this amazingly clever things with really good things, it makes the really good things feel potentially sometimes like they're weaker than they are.
A lot of the time when you don't have a Tim Minchin song, you have Emma Thompson on screen giving a phenomenal performance. And then despite the fact that they cut all of their best songs, for Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood, they were able to get Stephen Graham and Andrea Riseborough, two of the best actors currently working, just to kind of pull faces and have fun. But they both have, each of them has a big song in the stage version, both of which were cut for the movie version.
Which makes sense.
I was played telly.
So you want to keep it moving.
Yeah.
I mean, Lashana Lynch as Miss Honey was an inspired choice as well.
She's phenomenal, and it is extraordinary to look at that and compare her to the performance in James Bond. That it's almost impossible it's the same person.
Yeah.
She's so kind of warm and yielding, and then when she starts singing, she's got the most incredible voice.
And Captain Marveling as well. That's the other thing in an alternative universe, admittedly. But
yes.
Helen, what were your thoughts on this adaptation? Seeing this is your first version of Matilda you've seen that's not the book.
Yeah, so how did it measure up to the Matilda of your imagination?
I mean, it was okay. I mean, I preferred the parts without the singing, if I'm completely honest.
Wow.
I liked the opening song. The opening song was
the
fine.
perfect thing would... If we'd like walked in and out of the room at if we'd like switched places,
Yes.
we'd like tag team.
Jack Sprat.
Yeah. Could have done
Eat
that.
no fat. His wife
So
could eat no
the
lean.
first song, I thought, yeah, this is interesting. This is bright. This is colourful. This is like a musical. And then, I don't know, I was just a bit like, these songs are a little bit... And then, like, it kind of wakes up for the revolting kids. And I'm just like, yeah, I kind of saw that, like, advertised. And I was kind of expecting it all to have that kind of energy. But, like, I think the cast is really, really amazing. But the whole thing with the acrobat kind of story in the background just really, really took me out of what was happening.
That's the thing that Dennis Kelly has added to the story.
Yeah, I was
Right.
like, I don't remember this.
When Helen started talking about only knowing the book, I began to wonder how that would land, because that's a complete invention of Dennis Kelly's for the stage version. It's not present in the Roald Dahl original or the Danny DeVito film.
Gotcha.
But I think it does give a bit of extra, as well as enabling us to be somewhere other than just at Matilda's home or at the school. It unites some disparate plot strands in quite a satisfying way. And I'm amazed at how Roald Dahlish it sounds.
Yeah, it
given
does
it's
quite a bit,
invented
actually,
by
yeah.
Dennis Kelly. With dynamite in her hair and sharks and spiky objects. It just really sounds
It's got a very...
Dahlish to me.
I say not being familiar with the book, I didn't quite
I was
get it.
like, this isn't in the book. Like, I was just like,
It's not.
no.
It's not in the book. I will
Not
confess.
in the book.
To be fair, it's also not very musical.
No, yeah, those are the sort of... They're kind of...
They've got a tiny bit of singing bits, haven't they?
Yeah.
But it's not quite as...
I think that's
You lose the lot about the telekinesis then, and it's all like, it kind of just, it appears and you're like, oh.
in the book and the film, you know from the beginning that Miss Honey is
Trunchbull.
Miss Trunchbull's niece. That's just a thing you know about the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore so there's it just has a little bit less plot, a little bit less detail, a little bit less catharsis when she's finally defeated.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember. I haven't read the book for decades, so I didn't know if that was when I saw the stage show, I wasn't sure what happened there. I know in this version, Matilda doesn't have a brother, but it was neither here nor there.
But it loses a lot of the home life, and I don't really feel that you get from this how dissatisfied with her home life and how things are, like apart from like him calling her a boy all the time.
A brother would help that, I think.
Yeah.
You kind of lean into that a bit. Where if it's just her, there's something about like picking one.
Yeah.
As being, this is the favoured one, and
he's a
over the
boy
other one
as
that's
well.
really a bit more insulting, as opposed to they're just like layabout
Crappy parents.
parents.
And the other big change from the play is the ending is completely different, because there's a bit at the end of the play where the Russian mobsters turn up and then Matilda outwits them, which I actually think is probably my least favourite bit of the play. And the ending of the film is much more streamlined and adroit and impactful. And what I really love about it, which I really picked up this time around, is the ending of the film is kind of about Matilda's generosity as she shakes her father's hand and kind of forgives him for all the awful things that he's done to her. And so it becomes about the emotional connection between them, even though we imagine she's never going to see him again. Whereas the play, it's just sort of about hijinks and outwitting people.
Is there anything else guys want to say before we head to the scores?
Oh, yes, I do. So it happens that in the last few months, I've also seen a couple of other musical films which come at the end of a long line of different versions. So we've had Mean Girls, which is the musical film of the stage musical of the film of the book. And so too is Colour Purple.
Yes.
The musical film version of the stage musical of the film of the book. And Colour Purple in particular, I think, is very weird. I haven't seen the stage show. I read the book many years ago and don't remember an awful lot about it, and I have seen the film a couple of times. But the musical... There's this thing that often the trailers of these films seem almost embarrassed about the fact they're musicals and try to avoid.
Oh, it's like
putting
foreign
any
language
songs
films,
in.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone's silent in this trailer for some reason. I wonder
staring
why.
at each other meaningfully.
Everyone is
meaningfully.
silent, and I don't recognise them from Hollywood films. Why could that be?
It's like the trailer for Wicked doesn't have any songs in it.
Oh, for crying out loud!
It's like, I'm pretty sure it's a musical.
With The Colour Purple, there's a bit of plot, and then you hear the orchestra strike up, and then they sing a song during which the plot does not move at all. And then that song ends, and no singing material ever bleeds into the next scene. There's no kind of overlap. There's no kind of bit of dialogue in the middle of a song, and no song is ever called back. It's like they were shooting this film with the explicit intention of being able to cut the songs out. because there is no point at which the story is told through song. And so it was a real pleasure to sit and watch Matilda again and see the story told through music, and to see the music and the dialogue integrated and overlapping and all being part of one coherent storytelling enterprise.
Speaking of, that does immediately make me think, because you've just phrased that. It's like the musical episode of Star Trek does a better version of that.
Yes.
That's of the more recent one, of Strange New Worlds, manages to integrate the storytelling.
Yes.
That is a better enterprise.
Well, guys, let's head to the scores.
I'm Sam Clements, host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have included fellow Stripped Media family members Martin and Sam from Song by Song, and Kobe from Flixwatcher, and Dave from The Wire Stripped. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
Welcome to our Flixwatcher scores. They're always out of 5. You may have decimal places if you fancy that. And we'll start with you, please, Tom, with your recommendability.
I think I go 4.5. There will be people this won't work for. If you don't like musicals, if you're allergic to kids, then this is going to have all the things in it that you hate. But if you are at all amenable to being told a story in which little school kids prance around and sing their hearts out, then you'll be hard-pressed to find a better version than this. There are an awful lot of people I would recommend it to unreservedly, and there are people I would be very confident saying, give this a go and see what you think, and be fairly happy that they would be likely to come away having had a good time. 4.5.
John?
Just listening to Tom on that and saying, this isn't going to work for all people, and there are going to be people who don't like musicals and don't like the comedy aspects of it. But in many ways, those are the people I don't want to have anything to do with. So if anything, I feel that makes it a 5 on the basis of going, I'll recommend this to people, and if they're put off by it, go, well, you can sod off, I don't want to know you. So I'll go with a 5.
An acid test film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you don't...
Shibboleth the musical.
Yeah, if you kind of watch this and go, well, this is awful, you've wasted my time, you go, what sort of absolute monster are you? Get out of my life.
So what are you going for, John?
Going 5.
5. Helen, are you going to get off John's life?
I'll get my coat then. Yeah, I don't want to do this because it's kind of boomery, but as a Dahl purist, I'm going to play that card. And I feel it messes... Adding that, if they'd have not included the acrobat bit, then that would have made it an hour and a half. Then I probably would have enjoyed it a bit more, but I just found it a little bit of a slog. If I was rating this personally, I'd probably rate it quite a bit lower, but there are people who like it. I think maybe if you aren't so invested in the book, or you're invested in the book in a way that you're like, yeah, you can mess around with it and add bits and make a musical out of it, and I'm like down with it, then you'll enjoy it. But I don't know, it's too long, didn't really gel with the songs, and there was I didn't get on with the trapeze thing, so I'm going to give it a 3.
I think a musical does live or die on the songs. If the songs don't work for you, then really nothing else will.
The thing is, the first one and the last one, I was like, these slap, but what happened in the middle, I don't really remember.
When I grow up?
No, they're not getting the reaction. No. I think there's something to be said. And I think I can agree on the specific one, because I think the key thing that those of us who are enjoying it are finding is that we won't really people who grew up with the book. And if it's a book, I think this is probably true of any sort of adaptation. If there's a book that you kind of really, really love as a book, seeing any adaptation of it is a tricksy thing. It's like one of the reasons why my favourite novel is The Great Gatsby. I've never wanted to watch a film of it at all. Like the Baz Luhrmann one, you're going, well, that looks like it's missed the point completely. You can sod off. And I'm sure someone who's never read the book or doesn't have an interest in the book will get a lot out of seeing that. That there are some things when a book is particularly precious to you where I think it's kind of understandable that if it doesn't entirely land.
That's the first time I've ever heard someone from this side of the pond say The Great Gatsby is their favourite book.
It's just bloody magnificent. The fact it is so pure and tight. It's like it's quite short as well, isn't it? It's such a short book that manages to contain multitudes, and it's just remarkably rich.
I might need to reread that. Like I said, I read Matilda copious times when I was a youngster, and then, like I said, I'm a huge Tim Minchin fan. I've seen him on stage at least twice. I'm probably thinking more than that. And lyrically, I think he's only bettered by Lin-Manuel Miranda in place. In terms of musicals, it is Hamilton, then Groundhog Day, then Matilda for me in terms of like 3 onstage musicals. And those ones, with each song, for each song, as Tom was saying, for all those 3 stage musicals, each song drives the plot forward. Whereas even Wicked, I'm watching that thinking, I don't really care that much about, apart from Defying Gravity, which I think is an astonishing song.
Yeah, but I felt that with Wicked. I saw it and I just thought, it's reminded me of when I saw the Witches of Eastwick musical, and I was thinking, I can't remember some of the tunes of these songs whilst I'm hearing them.
Yeah.
Was there a Witches of Eastwick musical?
There was. It starred Ian McShane.
Wow.
As Jack Nicholson, yeah. Which now feels a bit more plausible than it did at the time when it was just like a year or two post Lovejoy, whereas now in the Deadwood phase, you're going, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a particular kind of musical as well, and I think people do like Minchin or they don't like him, or they don't like his cleverness of style and tonality and word trickery and wordplay. But Helen said you like the first one, which is like Tim Minchin's The Hill, isn't it? And also the last one I think as well is his style. I'm going to go for 4.1. I think it's going to be difficult to recommend to some people just purely because of the musicality of it all. And I nearly didn't watch it because I liked the stage show and I liked the previous version. I didn't think it was going to work, but I think it did. I think it really did. Yeah, 4.1.
Matthew Warchus is a clever guy. This is only his 3rd film, and his previous film was Pride.
Yeah, I mean, Pride was, we scored that super highly here before.
Yeah.
4.1. Repeat viewing score. Tom.
5. I think musicals have a rewatchability. If you like musicals, then I think they are more rewatchable than other things. Maybe I would say musicals, then comedies, then dramas, because it's like listening to a familiar song over and over again. I think you can watch a musical number over and over again and keep getting stuff out of it. Comedy, you don't have the shock of surprise, but you can still kind of enjoy the anticipation. And so, yeah, this is very rewatchable for me. This was my 3rd time watching it. Watched it at the cinema. I bought it on Blu-ray and watched it more or less as soon as it arrived. And I've actually watched a couple of individual songs from it since then. Netflix doesn't give you the sing-along version, which was briefly in cinemas and which is included on the Blu-ray, which is a shame.
Yeah, I had the words on, so I could
subtitles.
sing along. Well, yeah.
But it's just sort of more artfully done.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very rewatchable. I can see myself watching this annually for many years to come. 5.
John.
I mean, I think Tom has weirdly hinted at a direction of my score when he said that he'd watched a couple of the songs. Because I feel that that's something that could knock potentially down a point, because I think it's really rewatchable, but there would just be a temptation to like press the skip a track bit on the Blu-ray just to kind of go, oh yeah, just okay, like skip the talking bit, let's get to that song again, and just enjoy that, like occasionally you can do with some of the films where there's just really good tunes. And yeah, because I go, I know the story, but I'd enjoy the songs. So the songs are the really rewatchable, so I'm going to go 4.
Helen.
You could just listen to the soundtrack.
This is also true.
But Matthew Warchus has done such a wonderful job with the choreography, so I think you would get some benefit from that. And as I said, I had the soundtrack of the stage show. I listened to that over and over. But there is a real liveliness, a real vim to the way these are shot. And again, very often totally different from the way they were done on stage. When I Grow Up is the song which opens Act 2 of the stage show and has them on those trapezes swinging out over the audience. And then here it's the one where they are either like coming home from school and they're all in different modes of transport and they end up flying planes. And
that's quite later on in the film as well, the When I Grow Up song.
It's almost exactly the halfway point. It's the same point.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's about an hour into what's about a 2-hour film.
So, Helen, repeat viewing score.
Yeah, I was just thinking a bit off track, but like how these things that existed either as books or ideas were musicals and then became films. And I feel as though there is, for me, even though I haven't seen the stage, there's something missing in that, particularly how you've been talking about it, Tom, about like things coming out and swinging. That doesn't quite carry over for me. And we had this when we reviewed In the Heights as well. And I was just like, nah, I didn't get on with it. But maybe if I'd been to see it and then watched the film, I might have got more out of that.
Something more out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I think we did talk about this at one point in the Best Pick pod about how almost by definition a really good play tends to make a mediocre film. And you can get really quite good films out of mediocre plays because you can do more things with them. But it's always like, why? I mean, I'm saying this in a quite a mean manner because I've not seen the film, so I can't really comment. But I've never felt the urge to watch the film version of Warhorse.
Yes.
Because I felt so much about what's interesting and exciting about Warhorse is the puppetry of the horse, not the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if that's somehow a real horse, you're going, well, I don't care. Or a CGI horse or whatever, who cares?
The Warhorse book is a first-person novel told from the point of view of a horse, which is extraordinary. The National Theatre version is this incredible horse puppet where they just have the puppeteers in full view and you don't notice and you don't care, which is extraordinary. And then the film is just a film.
May or may not have real horses. They might be.
Yes.
I do worry that they might do a Back to the Future, the musical, as a film.
No.
No, they can't.
Oh,
really.
God.
Of course they
The
can.
money they'd make would be insane.
Oh.
I mean, they can. I liked the musical, that musical well enough. I was bought tickets for it for a birthday thing, but it's not really. It's not the same league.
And all the actors are just impersonating the actors from the film.
It's a musical that's basically just going, hey, remember that film you like? Here it is again with some songs.
And look, we could do the things that were, if not easy, then certainly not very difficult with 1985 movie effects. We could do them live on stage. But doing them with the 2020s with CGI would be the epitome of pointlessness.
Yeah, there are no songs worth remembering. I suppose there was quite a nice Doc Brown song at the beginning of the second half from what I remember, but
Stranger things have happened, guys, in this quest to make money from IP.
yeah.
The obvious example is the producers. So you had the original Mel Brooks film, which is a classic.
And then Matthew Broderick's version, there's a...
Yes, who knew that it could be turned into such an extraordinary stage show, but they did. And they even managed to find a way that in the Springtime for Hitler moment, which is kind of the centerpiece of the film, there's an incredible shot in the original film where the dancers are shot from above Busby Berkeley style to make a swastika, which is just extraordinary. And you think, well, how can you possibly pull that off on film?
yeah.
How can you possibly pull that off on stage? And the answer is they bring down a mirror so that from your vantage point of the audience, you can see the dancers from above and it still works. And then when they made the movie of the musical, they filmed a mirror.
It's like they missed
I mean, it is...
the part of
Yeah.
having a film camera.
Anyway.
I love that stage show that we had. There's Peter
That
Kay
stage
in
is
that
phenomenal.
one. I can't remember who else was in it, but it was great. Sorry, repeat viewing score, Helen.
I mean, I think it's unlikely, but I'm going to go 2.5 just because you all seem to like it that much. You love it so
It's
much,
peer
Tom,
pressure.
that I really can't slag it off that bad.
No, vote from your heart, Helen. Vote from your heart.
I think, for me, it's a combination of me and whether Milo will watch it or let me watch it growing up. I'm going to hedge my bets with 3.8 here. And I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about Bugsy Malone when I'm considering whether Milo will like it, because Bugsy Malone was like legit on my TV screen as much as I can put it on TV when I was a kid growing up. So when I think there's that thing where kids who grew up with Harry Potter and the same age as Harry Potter took it to the heart in the ways that adults, as we were watching it, if you watched any, Helen, I know you haven't, would just have that alienating device from it. So I think if it takes to his heart, he'll watch it loads, and I'll be happy to watch it with him. If he doesn't, then I'll watch it a bit less. So 3.75. Small screen score. Tom?
I did watch this first in the cinema. It probably does work better there. It doesn't lose an awful lot on the small screen, but it's not quite the same overwhelming cinematic experience. 4.5.
John?
I feel a 4. I feel that I watched it on a very small screen, actually. So because
Did you watch it on your phone?
Yeah, no, I didn't watch it quite that small, and I'm not an absolute heathen, Tom.
I watched it on my Apple Watch.
No, there's got to be at least, I try
now
to...
Now we understand why you didn't like it. Now it all makes sense.
I try to at least have like a relatively big TV, or sometimes if I'm feeling like in the right mood, it's the right kind of film, it's on the projector on the wall, or indeed sometimes in
outside,
the garden, which is great. And it's about garden cinema time at the moment. I really should get into that. But no, I feel that I don't think it necessarily. It's hard to tell because I didn't see it in the cinema, but it didn't feel like I was missing out on anything insanely cinematic by seeing it on the small screen. But as I say, hard to say without having seen it. But I felt it's a strong. And also, I suppose you've got the slight ease of having kids around and them running around and being little dicks like they are, if they are, or So there is an advantage that you can have kids, and the fact that they're being really annoying doesn't make you terribly embarrassed in front of all the other patrons in the cinema, where you're going, I don't know who this small person is. They've got nothing to do with me. Which, to be fair, not actually having kids is as I do, is often true. So that just sounds dodgy. It sounds like I'm like carting random children around. I know I've got nephews and a not stepchild, and there's all manner of things. So I know what kids are like in the cinema.
What was your
So
score?
Four. I said four.
Yeah, you did say four. Yeah,
I said four, like right at the top, and then I just waffle because that's what I do. You may have noticed.
Helen.
I kind of swing like wildly with watching a musical in the cinema as to watching at home. Like I watched Spielberg's West Side Story in the cinema. I thought it was incredible. I'm never going to watch that at home. It just won't work. Whereas for this, I was like, I'm fine seeing it here. I would not have gone to the cinema. And now you're saying there would have been kids there and they would have been excited and making noises and running
they
about.
They wouldn't get it. They just wouldn't get it, the little shits. This is not for them. These lyrics are far too clever for you. Go to school, read some books, like the film's telling you, but before you're allowed to watch the film.
Cinemas for grown-ups. It was fine for me at home, so a 5. And also I could put the words on and make sure I understood what they were singing.
A marvel in his lyricry. I'm going to go for 5 as well. Yeah, I loved it. I've only seen it once. I saw it on my TV screen and thought, yeah, lovely. Engagement score, Tom.
Yeah, 5. Once I'm in. This has held me wrapped. Third time around. I imagine next time I watch it, the same. I don't feel there's a long wait between songs. I think the songs come along fairly frequently, and a little bit of building of tension. Will there be another song? Will there be another song? Hey, here's another song. I think is all to the good. So yeah, I'm completely wrapped all the way through. Can I give it 6?
No.
Can I give it 7?
No. I could tell what the score would be if you had, but no, it doesn't. Yeah. It's a spreadsheet. It calculates anything.
Explode if you play with it.
John.
I'm going to go 4.8. That's because I ever so slightly factoring in that thing I said about those little lulls when it's not the songs, but the bits in the middle are still good. And it's that, as I say, that unfortunate thing of I think it's a false sense of them being weaker because, I mean, well, they are weaker, but a full sense of a drop because the highs are so high that the bits that are lower are still damn high. But it still feels that's got to knock it down from a 5. But a 4.8 I think is fair.
Helen.
Yeah.
This is looking scary.
From your heart.
Yeah, don't feel intimidated.
Friends, don't worry. It's a good film.
Well, you say that, but given what I said earlier, I mean...
Yeah, it's just... There's like key moments in the book, the whole realising she's got telekinesis and the like thing with the newt and the Magnus on the chalkboard was such kind of like really big moments in the book. But in the film, they don't feel like it because all the songs are kind of like the big moments and the big shouty moments. And it was just a bit like, it didn't feel like the story that I knew, but I did know the story. So I was a little bit like, when is that going to happen? Is that not going to happen? Like, did I imagine it happening? And I was just kind of waiting for the beats to happen that I knew. And then I was like, oh, we've got another song. What's this song about? They made this bit up as well. And yeah, I think by then I'd slipped into, we've got another hour left. So sorry to...
I'm going for 4.5 just because I felt like it to be a bit tighter, I think. And I agree, I guess the story with the trapeze artists could possibly have been removed because it does slow the pace down a bit, just generally. So I think that'd be a bit nicer.
I'd have preferred some of the songs that were missing instead of the trapeze artist, maybe.
Gives an overall score of 4.16563.
Still pretty good despite my scores. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
I didn't destroy it too much.
I'll be interested to see what happens to Alisha Weir after this. It's an incredible... I don't think it's quite a film debut, but I mean, it's a leading role for a very small child, which is something you don't see all that often. She's already cropping up in a couple of other things. She's got a small role in Wicked Little Letters, and I think she is the titular Abigail in Abigail, a horror film that's out at the moment. And it'd be interesting to see if she's able to transition from child roles to grown-up roles, because I think she is a phenomenal talent, like really holding her own against a powerhouse cast here.
Thanks very much, guys, for listening so far. Please do follow us, guys, on Twitter. We talk about films generally, but also we do ask for a shout out when we come to record these episodes. So look out for a tweet saying something similar like, we're reviewing Matilda the Musical with @Mr. John Dorney and @Tom Salinsky from @BestPickPod. All these highlighted, guys. You can go and follow these guys, in there. Question mark, have you seen it? Tell us your thoughts and you score out of 5 stars for an on-air shout out on Twitter. Tell us your thoughts and you score out of 5 stars for an on-air shout out on Flixwatcher, this here podcast right now. And we had one tweet. Tom, do you want to take it away?
Yes, so this is from Lee Thomas @LeeThomas5. And Lee Thomas says, review from Child 1 is that she loves it and that it's funny. We have the soundtrack on in the car quite often. There you go, Helen. 5 stars from her.
Beautiful.
Nice. I want to know
go.
what Child 2 thought.
No, yeah. Begs the question.
I want to know what Child 0 thought.
Oh, dear Lord. That's terrifying.
Yeah, Tom, John, tell us where we can find your line. Tell us about the books. And yeah, we'll say goodbye to listeners.
So John and I used to do a podcast called Best Pick Pod. I say used to because it's sort of in retirement at the moment, but it will come back at some point because our remit is to watch, review and assess every film that's won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and there is one outstanding currently.
Yes.
So
yes.
Probably in December we will release an episode about Oppenheimer. And then you can also find me on Twitter @Tom Salinsky, or go to @tomsalinsky.co.uk/blog, where you'll find my musings on all manner of things.
Yep, and you can find me at Mr. John Dorney on Twitter. I think Terry's dead now on Instagram. And you can find some of the scripts I've written for Doctor Who audios and Avengers audios and all manner of audios, bigfinish.com.
And look out for Columbo podcast coming to you
Yes.
sometimes.
Would it have killed you to say, oh, just one more thing? Look out for the Columbo
My
podcast.
wife thinks you're terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for coming
Cheers.
on. Bye.
Right.
Bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us @FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're @FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes, and Rockwood Audio's editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.